Well, Second Gentleman Emhoff, welcome to the National Portrait Gallery. Thank you so much for joining us for our summit and in this beautiful space.
Well, thanks for having me. Hello, everyone out there.
Yeah, well, I guess we should look at this beautiful exhibit, I Dream a World. Some really incredible Black women in here. That Septima Clark starting us off here, champion of democracy, champion of citizenship. So a good harbinger for this conversation, I
Definitely.
guess. Shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay.
So I love this museum.
Same.
And
one of my favorite
around,
places.
Every time I come here, you see something new.
Yeah.
And it's just living history in a way people may not have seen it before.
Agree.
Especially exhibits like this.
Agree. And I think this is somebody that you've met before. I think Cicely Tyson here, you and the Vice President knew her personally.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, one of her favorite people in the world. One of just an icon, you know, growing up, watching her, Sounder, autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, and so many others. Kamala VP, my wife, just loves her so much, and we actually have her book that she wrote and publicized right before she died.
Oh wow!
It's in our living quarters at the residence, where only we can see it. So because she's just so inspired by her, and it has a real place of honor where we spend a lot of our time. Yeah,
well, certainly a very powerful, just her representation and her pioneering. A powerful example for y'all, and so that is pretty special to have her.
What a picture too.
It is. It's beautiful.
Again, we were saying as we were walking in, these are images of these iconic women in ways we haven't seen them before.
Yes.
Which is great art.
Yeah, I agree. I
gotta bring my wife here.
Sonia Sanchez, such powerful words and such a beautiful portrait of her too.
Oh wow.
Now this one is one of my favorites, Myrlie Evers. I mean, incredible
Look
portrait
at that.
of
Look
her.
at the power in that pose.
Yeah, I mean, her gaze, the flag.
And still a patriot. I've been talking about this a lot, where even if you talk about things that need to change and you're talking about justice and civil rights, it doesn't mean you're not a patriot.
No,
in fact, it's one of the most patriotic things you can do. And holding the flag like that is just exactly what I've been saying.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
The power.
Such a good point. I think another example of just what you're talking about is Dorothy Height, just her amazing leadership to try to make a freer and fairer and more equal society for everybody, right?
Both heroes of Kamala's.
Yes.
Interesting. I'm seeing in both pictures the pearls.
Yes.
Which, of course, is it's interesting.
Yeah, I love this portrait of her. Just so many Black women who, in their own way, contributed to our democracy and our society in such profound ways. So, what an exhibit.
And thank you for bringing me here.
Thanks for showing up.
This is great.
Well, it's good to be with you again, Mr. Second Gentleman. I actually haven't seen you in about a month when we were together on the continent for your wife's first trip to the continent, the Vice President on the continent. But you also were doing quite a bit over in Africa. I was actually kind of sad that I didn't get to see more of your agenda because you were really busy. Can you just kind of share some of the highlights from your trip to Africa? Some of the young women and girls that you met with, what you learned on that trip.
Well, great to see you here. The trip was amazing. I focused on mostly gender equity type issues, women's empowerment. Economic issues, and an amazing event on clean cooking, which is all tied into the environment, tied into lifting up women, lifting them out of violence. So we did fisher women in Tanzania. I did an event with the NBA. We were just chatting off camera about the playoffs, but there is a massive presence of the NBA in Africa. I think they tell me about 60 players in the NBA right now have African roots.
Right.
And so it is a huge thing. And I did the first ever women's basketball clinic sponsored by the NBA in Ghana. There was music. We had a music event. I did there's a teen show called YOLO in Ghana, which I did a roundtable there, our big town hall. I did a legal event because I'm also passionate about access to justice.
Yeah.
And we did that. So it was all the things that I've been trying to talk about here as Second Gentleman, whether it's lifting up women, gender equity, access to justice, pushing back on hate. We had a little bit of all that on the trip, but it was also to lift up the work of the Vice President and the administration. You know, we went in tandem, and this was a part of the United States effort to show that close partnership and connection on the continent. And you know, meeting with the leaders there, which I was also a part of with her, was really, I think, very powerful. And also to see her, you saw a little bit of what I saw, to see a woman in power,
Yes.
A Black woman, part of the diaspora in power, was very compelling. To see the thousands of people lining the streets,
Yes.
especially a lot of little girls with the flags and the Kamala shirts and the joy, and it was really, really powerful to see.
Yeah, I want to ask you a little bit more about that, because there were a lot of those kinds of moments, and you all were there together, and you got to see kind of up close how she was leading but also experiencing that time on the continent. I think about her visit to the Cape Coast in Ghana.
Yeah.
You were there with her for that moment. What can you tell me about that moment and just kind of what that was like for her?
It was very personal, very searing, very emotional, infuriating.
Yeah.
To walk through that factory of evil, to hear about women being raped and then being forced to carry those children, and those children being ripped away from them, and those women then being thrown on those horrible, they're not even ships,
right.
And they're just stuck together, often dying on the way over, never to see those children again, those children were then made to forced to work there. And to experience that with her was just really intense. And to watch her then go out there in front of the world and talk about it. And she had some prepared remarks, and I think I literally saw her rip them up and say, I need to just go out there and talk about what I saw, and just to get out there with the passion and the power and again, the fury about what she saw and the way she connected it to what's happening now. Was such an intense, incredible moment that I know I'll never forget.
I really confronting that past was such an important part of that trip, but also really talking about the future, right? The future of Africa, right. And how that's tied to so many young people that are there on the continent, and also just the idea that Africa is going to be such a huge part of the world population, and what that means in terms of gender equity, economic mobility. Having that conversation on the world stage felt just kind of very important for her and for you.
It was, and she gave a massive speech in Ghana, thousands of people, and she did. You heard her say many times, the average age 19, and several years from now, fully a quarter of the world's population will be on the African continent, and that's why it's important to have these connections, these relationships, that are also focused on the economy, focused on clean energy. She focused on public-private partnership. She brought billions of dollars of investment to the continent through private sector leaders on this trip. Just the one-on-one meetings that she had with the leaders, and the meetings that we all had through the state dinners and my engagements with them as well. Very important. There was also, when she was in Zambia, one of the other great moments was to go back to where she was as a 4-year-old, where her grandfather from India was a dedicated public servant, was there in Zambia in the 60s, and her aunt was also a resident in the hospital there. And to go back to the plot of land where he lived, the house wasn't there, the hospital where her aunt worked, and then to go back to the assembly hall where there's this amazing picture of her as a 4-year-old,
Yes.
and now as
Here she
Vice
is,
President
yeah.
of the United States.
Greeting the first woman speaker.
Greeting that
there.
speaker was, again, one of those other moments that I know I'll never forget. It was just incredible.
Yeah. Well, I want to turn back to domestic issues and what's happening here in the United States, because, we're having this conversation as we are approaching kind of the 1-year anniversary of the Dobbs decision that ended federal protections for abortion. And I know as second gentleman, you had the opportunity to really kind of see the intergenerational reactions from the women that you love the most, your mom, your wife, your daughter, kind of what can you tell me about that moment, just reflecting on what that moment was a year ago? What was your reaction to that decision?
Yeah, well, we had the leaked just draft, so we kind of knew it might be coming, but people were hoping that it wouldn't be that way. So Vice President, my wife, was flying on Air Force Two somewhere, and the news hit, and she called me right away, and it was something like, Dougie, they did it. They actually did it. And I could hear the anger, but also the purpose. I'm going to do something about this. And then within minutes, our 23-year-old daughter, Ella, who, she's doing her thing. She hasn't really been, pinging me all the time about politics.
Yeah.
So for her to weigh in, it was literally like, Dad, ... you need to do something about this. She's 23. And then shortly after, Barb, my 82-year-old mother, who was one of those women in the 60s and early 70s who was passionate about equal rights and abortion rights and all the things that make women, equal citizens. And her reaction was something like, how dare they? How are they going to take something away that I've fought for and we all fought for and I've had for almost 50 years, and now all of a sudden Ella's not going to have this?
Yeah.
You need to do something about this. So this is not an issue, though, that I just was awoken to. This is something that I've always been passionate about as a lawyer, just someone who believes women are equal and need to be treated that way in all facets. And I was just outraged. And again, as the first man in this role, having the microphone, being a lawyer, I said, let's go. We need to do something. So literally, that within day or days, or even that night, we were out speaking at NARAL. I was having meetings. I was talking to doctors. I was doing all this work behind the scenes. I wrote, just to know what the impact could be. And now, of course, we know how horrible it is. It's a healthcare crisis. You see the stories of women being denied healthcare, and it's horrendous.
Yeah.
I wrote an article for GQ about it, so I just wanted to be out there in front as a man in this role, saying this is not just an issue for women, this is an issue for all of us. It's about fairness, it's about equality, it's about fundamental rights, and it's about making sure women aren't less than. They can't be.
And it's also about economic mobility, right?
Absolutely.
It is an economic issue, abortion, and helping people understand that connection. How are you also helping to communicate that?
Yeah, I'm trying to just tell the truth, which is, in fact, that when you lift up women, you lift up the economy. So when women are fully able to participate in our democracy, fully able to have childcare, family leave, paid equally, advancement in careers, and ability to have health care, whether it's when they're having a baby, whether when they need to make decisions about whether to have an abortion or not, whether all those things are connected. And it's impacting women's ability to fully participate in our economy, which is not fair. And if we fixed all these things, childcare, family leave, equal pay, more advancement, access to reproductive freedom, maternal health care, all these things, it would help everyone. So even cynical people, like, why do I care about that? Well, you should, because it's the right thing to do. And if you don't, there's all this objective information that's factual, that if we do all this, it's going to lift up our entire economy. and it's going to, again, help women fully participate. And that's what we need. It's just the right thing to do.
Yeah, I see you using your role, using your platform really to be that ally who is showing up on gender equity, but also for the LGBTQ community, the Jewish community, the Asian American community, right? Both experiencing, horrible incidents of hate in our political climate in this country right now. Can you talk about really just kind of how you're using your role as second gentleman for allyship and helping people to understand the relationship between kind of our shared fate and gender and economic mobility?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up. I'm an entertainment lawyer from LA, and I come from a community that's very open, that works together, lives together, is kind to each other, celebrates differences, and there's power in that. Mm-hmm. And so in this role, I'm just bringing what I've always believed to the table, and just trying to find issues that are just messed up. Like when you're denying people the ability to be who they are, love who they are, love who they want to love, marry who they want to marry, read what they want to read, teachers teach what they want to teach, all these things. You need to speak up and speak out and call out those who are staying silent, those who are doing it, but also those who are staying silent. And being the first Jewish person ever, which I couldn't believe, married to a president or vice president, I really felt a heavy responsibility to speak out against anti-Semitism, mm-hmm. which then led me on this journey of speaking out against hate of all kinds, and whether it's Asian hate, Islamophobia, all these things that we're seeing. And now it's led me to speaking out all over the world on this, having meetings. We're working on a plan to combat anti-Semitism that the government is doing. It's all connected. And that means we all need to stand together in allyship and work together. It's a cliche, but a hate against one is a hate against all. And we need to recognize that and come together and push back. And I'm going to keep leaning in on this as much as possible because we need to do it, unfortunately. Hate is on the rise. Yeah. There's an epidemic of hate, anger that we need to push back on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you are learning a lot in this role that you are having to build as you are in it. I mean, you are the first second gentleman that we've ever had, and there was really nobody that you could turn to for advice on how to do this job. But I wonder, just as you think about what you've learned over the past few years, there will eventually be a second gentleman.
Better be.
What would be a piece of advice that you would have for the next second gentleman?
Our First Lady, Dr. Biden, was the same advice I'd give, which is, it's almost impossible to tell you what this will be like because you won't believe me. Because it's so different, some of it's so surreal that it's hard to explain it until you live in it. 2, you have to be yourself. You have to be who you are. You have to be your true authentic self and communicate to people in that way, because people, don't like phonies, and you can help your spouse and help the administration by just leaning into these issues authentically, how you are, and that would be my advice. But I've been saying, people say, what do you want your legacy to be? And I always say more Kamala Harris's. We need more women in leadership. So we need more men to support their partners who are looking to maybe throw their hat in the ring for elected office or try to go for that promotion or whatever it is, because we just need more women in leadership all over the place.
Well, we at the 19th certainly agree with that. Yeah. So you were the exact right person to join us here for Summit to talk about this issue. Thank you so much, Mr. Second Gentleman, for being here.
Thank you so much.